What is up, ladies and gents? It is Noli here with the Prophecy Meta channel, and I would like to welcome you all to Prophecy, the auto chess battle based on the game and the gods of the MOBA Smite. Today I'm going to be walking you through the basics of the game, how to position, level and spend your gold, as well as touching on some more specific strategies. High level meta is still very much so developing, so the more in-depth specifics will be saved for future videos. It's also worth mentioning that the game has a rotating unit, trait and item system, so every game is slightly different. That means you're going to have to be adaptable when you play, so there's no surefire way to guarantee victory. It's all about formulating a plan, watching what other people are doing, and making plays around your RNG, not being a slave to it. Fortunately, virtually every strategy is tenable, so it's much more about getting in-game and trying things out with the outlines I'm going to give you here. Let's get into it. The premise of the game is that you, with your chosen leader, battle against 7 other players with up to 8 additional units. Traits, which enhance your team and leader abilities depending on how many you own, and items which offer individual unique effects. The aim of the game is to reduce every opponent's health from 100 to 0 while still retaining some health yourself. Damage is dealt on a round by round basis, scaling based on how many of your gods survive the battle. If 2 or more even number of players have their health reduced to 0 simultaneously, or lose whilst in the danger status, they will both be eliminated from the game. You can level up your leaders, gods and items to try and swing matches in your favour, protecting your health and dishing out more damage to your opponents. However, if the fight can't be settled within the scaling time limit, then the round is drawn and you will both receive damage. The battles are all 1v1, but you will battle against all other players based on your current health ranking on the scoreboard. They're simulated in real time so that every variation you make is visible on screen. Not only is it about the characters you choose and how you build them, but also how you choose to position to counter the opponent's strategy. First and foremost, we're going to talk about the leader system. At this alpha stage, there are 10 leaders to choose from, each with different passives, stats, and abilities. In the leader menu, you choose the order by which the system prioritizes who plays which character. At higher levels of play, it's maybe worth thinking about what other people will want to prioritize, but for beginners, I'd just recommend trying to order based off what you enjoy and think works best. For some basic insight, the mages Poseidon and Zeus are very strong but slightly trait dependent. Assassins such as Thanatos and Susanoo are great with all kinds of magical and physical builds but can be shut down by tanky cores, and fighters like Bellona are very much the jack of all trades, master of none style. If you're just starting out, Bellona is an ideal character to try because there's very little specific nuance to how she plays. You can build her how you like, and she will carry you through the early game by boosting your lower rarity units. At time of recording, Poseidon is pretty overtuned, but that will definitely change over time, and other than that, I'd say all leaders are somewhat viable. What's important is that you aim to play a character that fits the general style you enjoy, and that you're willing and able to play multiple characters, as there's no guarantee you'll get your number 1 if other people have the same first pick. Now that you've chosen your leader and entered into the game, it's time to talk about gameplay flow and some basics of positioning. Remember, pay attention to the traits that are available in your game during the loading screen to give some idea of what you want to look out for. Prophecy is played on a 16 by 16 square grid, where each character model occupies 4 squares. You can move your leader and purchase units around your side of the board freely, as long as they don't overlap spaces. As you start a game, you will be presented with a randomized starting shop consisting of 2 common god units, an item, and 2 traits. You will start out at level 2 with 2 gold to spend, meaning that you can add 1 unit to your team immediately. Generally, I recommend grabbing the unit that complements your leader here, so a tank or fighter if you're a mage or assassin, and a mage, assassin or hunter if you're a tank or fighter. But there are a variety of strategies that may suggest you act differently. A quick tip: I suggest you look out for characters such as Chernobog and Skadi. At least at the time of writing, these gods can carry you through your early game and still pack a massive punch later on. In this first combat, you will see how most elements of the game work. All characters have basic attacks which play out at their attack speed and deal damage based on their physical power stat. By dishing out damage and receiving damage, your gods will fill their mana bar, which differs in size from character to character. Once the mana bar is filled, your god will cast their ability. Dealt damage will generally scale off magical damage, and can apply magical crit. Characters excel at dealing and performing particular forms of damage, so make sure you're focusing on the right sort of things for the right sort of god. After the first fight plays out, you will either deal or receive a small amount of damage and again be given access to the shop. Don't worry too much about what happens in round 1, it really won't massively impact the overall result of the game. Here, though, you have a decision to make in terms of how you use your renewed money. Every round you'll be given 1 additional gold to spend, capping out at 10, so before round 2 you will have 3. You can choose to use this to level up your leader, buy an additional character, or if you happen to have a duplicate of the unit you first bought in the shop, you can also upgrade their stats at the same cost. You can also buy items and traits for 1 gold each. Leveling up your leader increases their stats and gives you access to additional unit spaces. This caps out at a maximum of a level 9, with the cost to level decreasing by 1 gold every round. Being at a higher level also gives you access to higher probabilities of rarer and often more valuable units, so should be done at a reasonable pace, but not at the expense of other elements of your build. At the shop, you can also re-roll the random options you were given. This will cost 1 gold per use, so generally should be limited in the early rounds. The final available option is to lock up the shop, granting you access to things in the previous shop that you didn't have the funds to buy. It's also worth noting that you don't have to place a shop purchase down immediately, meaning you can hold on to things without replacing your onboard setup, but this is a trade-off, as whilst holding a purchase, that space in the shop will be occupied and not rerollable. Heading into round 3, I would generally recommend picking up a 3rd level and character, unless there's an incredibly good upgrade item or essential trait you're rushing. After that, your decisions will become more varied, so there's no way I can instruct you on how to play round to round. Just remember to try and balance out all of the shop's elements, as over-prioritizing one could result in an early elimination or a very weak late game. Also, luck is definitely a factor in how you progress, but try and play as much of a game of poker as you can. Luck can win games, but it's much more important that you're adaptable to your luck. Settle, and instead of throwing a Hail Mary to achieve your perfect ideal of a build, go for skills that you know will at least give you something, especially in the early to mid game. Now let's talk about the most interesting part of the game, at least if you're a Smite fan, the gods. There are 5 types of god units to pick from, consisting of fighters, tanks and assassins, who are all melee basic attack characters, and mages and hunters, who are all ranged. Fighters are difficult to kill characters who rely on a mixture of utility abilities and reasonably powerful physical attacks. Tanks are your quintessential squad protectors who offer good crowd control and are hard to take down. Mages tend to deal high area of effectability damage from range, but are balanced by their high mana costs. Hunters are all about dealing physical damage over range, with some emphasizing big hits and others fast attack speed. And finally, assassins are uniquely able to teleport to their furthest facing opponent and deal melee damage to a single target with high scaling physical crit chance. Within each characterization, there are a variety of different gods, which either emphasize or subvert their basic playstyle I've outlined for you. For example, in the Assassin class, Bakasura offers only physical damage with a high chance to crit, whereas Kali has an excellent ability which is channeled over a duration, making it so she cannot make use of her basic attacks and instead scales well from magical damage. There is a subcategory I'd just like to quickly touch on, that being healers. As of right now, there are 2 healers in the game, Treant and Dryad. Both of them can be excellent on the right comp, but do watch out and make sure there's not a lot of anti-heal traits or characters that apply anti-heal available. As anti-heal is 100% across the board, healers are very easily counterable, making them somewhat of an all or nothing trap for new players. In total, there are 50 units in the game across 5 different rarities. The rarity of a character dictates their base stats and generally correlates with the overall power of the unit, but there's no hard or fast rule here. It is true that some of the best characters in the game will be those with orange legendary borders though. The quality of a unit also dictates its rarity and availability at each leader level. You can find out what your probability distribution for finding unit types is by hovering your mouse over the unit count at the top of the screen. Unit quality also decides how many of said unit is available to all players in the game. For example, there are 10 copies of a common unit available across all players, whereas there are only 6 for legendaries, making them much more exclusive to find and harder to fully upgrade to 5 stars. Finally, the rarer a unit is, the more expensive it is to buy and upgrade, making it more of a commitment in the early game. Remember, a 5-star common unit may be more valuable than a 1-star legendary, and vice versa. All units are definitely not created equally, with some gods being fantastic in all comps, while others are purely situational or need the right team backing them up. So, learning the abilities and strengths of individual units is much more important than picking just based off their perceived rarity. Keep your eyes open for a future tier list I plan on making if you want to know more about how I rate each character. Now you've got some idea of how increasing your arsenal works and what unit roles are, we can talk just a little bit more about board positioning. On the board, all characters will converge into combat ranges, aiming for the nearest target to their starting position. Generally, they will prefer to move forward rather than backwards. If both characters are ranged, then they will move to within their range basic attack radius by the fastest path possible and proceed to basic attack each other. Zhonghui and Hades have uniquely low range, while Jingwei can virtually shoot from one side of the board to the other, but generally, ranged characters can fire just beyond half of the board's distance. Melee characters must be on adjacent squares to target an enemy. With these mechanics in mind, how you set up the board is really important to keep your damage dealers alive. Tanks and fighters should be placed in the front line to absorb the aggression and protect the back line. You should also consider your spread of units to either force the focus onto one individual or spread the targeting across the front line depending on what you have and what you're up against. For example, there's nothing wrong with placing a damage dealer in a location where you know they'll fight a single tank, as that will speed up the rate at which they gain mana and not massively endanger them. The issue that prevents this being a hard and fast rule is the existence of assassins. Their movement is unique, as I have mentioned. They will teleport at the start of the map to the opposing unit furthest away from themselves. This means that an unprotected backline could be food to Bakasura if he's not distracted. That's where baits come in. Because the assassin wants to go on the backline, they will generally stand right at the back of the board to make sure that the furthest targets are the mages or the hunters. If we go in knowing this, sending a tank or fighter to the back of the board can absorb the assassin's attention, often wasting their time and getting a more important AoE ability charged up for your team. There are even some uniquely good damaging gods which work well as assassin bait, such as Jingwei or Chernobog. Good players will observe your baits and try to place their assassins around them, so try and be flexible. Adapting to your opponent's positioning and mind games that go along with that will come with time. Just keep in mind you can spectate opponents' matches instead of your own if you really want to do some early scouting. Next up, let's talk about builds. The first component of a build is the items you give to your units. Every non-leader unit can be given an item which provides a unique passive to that character. These effects tend to be fairly pronounced and in some cases vary completely how the unit functions in battle. For example, a percentage damage item on a character that is usually meant to be tanky can totally switch its focus to DPS. Generally, items can be broken down into 6 different categories: tank items, utility items, magical or physical damage items, attack speed items, and tank busting items. Every item can be upgraded a maximum of 2 times, costing increasingly more with every upgrade, and raising the stats their passives provide. The utility category is probably the most interesting. This can range from simple silencers or disarms, preventing the enemy from attacking, all the way to reviving your unit or a chance to deal true damage when you get hit. These are best used on characters that have wide-ranging abilities, very high attack speed, or have abilities that spawn pets who can also apply the utility. One of the best simple strategies for you to try out is the Anchor of the Earth on a character like Alpwatch or Arachne. This will respawn all their pets as well as themselves if they get taken out. Another thing to look out for are the percentage health damaging items. In the hands of gods with a fast base attack speed, things like Bonfire Bow and Furious Axe, which I have named the Tank Buster items, can be monstrously powerful and win you matches alone. Finally, we have traits. This is the most initially confusing but also interesting aspect to builds. There are 40 currently active traits that influence how your leader and team plays. Within every game, a set of 16 traits are chosen. There are only 10 of each of these traits available and shared between all 8 players. This means there's a balance created between getting the best counter skills and making sure you get enough of those skills online to actually feel the effects. Always check to see whether anti-heal skills are available, as they influence build options most prominently. Generally though, we can categorize these traits as defensive, offensive, and utility based. In order to access the effects of a trait, you have to have at least 2 spread across your team, but they will scale increasingly with every 2 you have, up to 6. Every non-leader unit can be equipped with up to 2 different traits. Your leader though will receive every available trait your team holds. This means you can build with the objective of buffing your squad overall, or aim to focus on skills that allow your leader to carry, even if it doesn't complement all your units. For some uniquely strong leader synergy suggestions, try Clarity on Susanoo, Silence on Zeus, and Opportunist on Poseidon. There are also sets of traits which complement each other. For example, Ice and Haste will give you much more consistent stuns, Isolation and Metallic will give you a great tanky bruiser team, and Endurance Molten carry the same idea but emphasize characters that scale well with health. Generally, the mana traits are all excellent and should be looked at by all leaders. There are also lots of active counter build option orientated traits, with Earth countering physical builds and Aether magical builds. Elite is also an amazing option if you're having trouble with Poseidon and Silencers. Remember, maintaining a balance between contesting the best skills and continuing to level up your leader and units is very important. Outside of very specific situations, just re-rolling until you get what you want is a very bad idea. Remember, the fewer opponents remaining in the game, the more you should look to counter build and keep an eye on their positioning. Right now, there's a tendency to corner camp in late game, especially with the powerful mages who benefit from forcing the opponents to come to them. Keep that in mind and try to look to insert your assassins in on the right targets, or build powerful AoE of your own to break them down. Thank you very much for watching this Prophecy tutorial. Hopefully you've learned something from it and you're ready to put that into practice in your own matches. Right now the game is still in closed alpha, so the best way to get your hands on it is by signing up with your email from the link below, or checking out the many streamers doing daily giveaways over on Twitch. If you're interested in more Prophecy videos, stay tuned with the channel and drop it a subscription. I intend to cover Prophecy throughout its development process and keep you up to date with its evolving meta. Hopefully, I'll see you all in the next one.